Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. Today we're going to make eggplant parmesan. This is something I haven't had in a long time. It's something that my mom made all the time when I was a little kid. And I would look forward to eating it at the beginning of the summer when the eggplants first started to ripen in the garden. But by the end of the summer, I was done with it because it showed up over and over and over again. And it wasn't always made with eggplant. It was sometimes made with eggplant and zucchini, depending on how many zucchini we're growing in the garden. So the first thing I want to do is slice these up and salt them. What do you call this? Eggplant? More often than not, I call it an aubergine. I know at various points in its history, it has gone by a bunch of different names. And some of those names are in reference to the fact that for a long time, people thought that eating this was poisonous. And so in English, for a very long time, this was called a mad apple or a raging apple because not only poisonous, but they thought it would make you insane by eating it. And most other cultures in Europe thought the same thing. In Italian, it's melanzana, but colloquially, it was known as mela insana, insane apple, mad apple, crazy apple. And in pre-1700s Europe, most languages referred to any and all fruits as apples. Instead of using the generic fruit that we would use today, they called generically these fruit. And then it had a qualifier as to what kind of fruit it was or what kind of apple it was. And apples themselves were rarely called apples, which I think is kind of interesting. But that's a topic for the old cookbook show on Sunday morning. Maybe we'll get into that there. So I'll just keep slicing these up and salting them. So the eggplant are in a colander, in a bowl. They've been salted. Each layer has been salted. And I'm going to let that sit for 25-30 minutes or so. The salt will draw out a lot of the liquid from the eggplant. And the idea is you want to draw the liquid out and get rid of it so that the eggplant can suck in all of the flavor that we're going to hit it with in the pan. To that end, I want to make tomato sauce. So I've got this jar of passata. I'll put that in, and I'm going to put a little bit of water in the jar just to get it all out. Okay, so the rest of that goes into the pot. To that, I'm going to add some oregano, some hot pepper flakes, some chopped up garlic. I've got a big piece of basil, in that goes, and I've got a can of cherry tomatoes because the passata is quite smooth, but I kind of like to have just a little bit of chunkiness to the sauce, so in they go. And a little bit of water to get everything out of the bottom. And now I'm going to hit it with a little bit of salt and pepper, and just a little bit at the beginning. I will taste it about a half an hour from now before I put it into the layers with the pan. I'm just going to bring this up to a simmer. I don't really need to boil it. Just a low simmer is fine. And I'll let that go while I prepare everything else. Everything is coming together nicely. The sauce is bubbling away here. It smells fantastic. Just gave it a taste. Seasoning is pretty good. The eggplant has lost a lot of moisture, and I've dabbed off quite a bit of the moisture just to dry them out a little bit before I dip them into the breading. So I'm going to do a breading system of 3 different dips. The first dip is going to be into a bit of flour with salt and pepper. And some salt, and I'll give that a stir before I move on. And then in this, this bowl, it's going to be a couple of eggs, and I will whisk those up with a fork. That's good. And this last dipping station, I'm going to put in panko because I really like panko. Now you could use regular breadcrumbs if you want to, or you don't even have to use breadcrumbs. Traditionally, I think it's just egg and flour and then a fry. So do whichever makes you happy. I know there were times where I didn't dip them in anything. They went straight out of the salt bath and into the frying pan. So dip them, cover them completely, And this is the time-consuming and messy bit of the whole process. So I'm just going to leave that there while I move on and do 2 or 3 more to fry all at once. And in they go. Oh, it could have been a little bit hotter. It'll be okay. The first batch of eggplant is pretty much fried nicely. So I'm going to take a little bit of sauce and we're going to put it in the bottom of this baking pan. Spread it along the bottom. And then I'm going to put in a layer of eggplant. And just fit them in as well as you can. Just pack them in as well as you can. Kind of like that. And then I know this is eggplant parmigiano, or eggplant parmesan. I'm going to grate in pecorino because I've got a big block of pecorino in the fridge, and I really like pecorino, and I use pecorino almost interchangeably with Parmesan. So I'm going to put in a layer of that grated cheese. And then I'll put another layer of fried eggplant. And then another layer of cheese. And I'll just keep layering it like you would lasagna until I'm at the top. This is the last layer. Now you can layer this any way you want. Now I'm putting the pecorino in between each layer. Of course, you could be using Parmesan. You could put the Parmesan between each layer. A lot of people will put sauce between each layer. You could put sauce and mozzarella between each layer. I mean, the way that you make this, there's infinite ways to do it. You don't have to layer it this way. I just kind of like it this way. I don't know why. It's just the way I want to do it. So I will put another layer of pecorino on top. Get it all over. Then I'll come in and ladle on the rest of the sauce. And the sauce, I find, sort of fills up all the nooks and crannies. The basil's in there too. I'm going to leave the basil in there because it's all flavor. Get the sauce everywhere. Now, I've got some fresh balls of mozzarella here, and I'm just going to dot some mozzarella across the top. My dish is really full. I had hoped that it would be probably about an inch lower than what it is right now so that I could put a lid on it. I'm still going to try and put a lid on it because I know that it will compress as it cooks in the oven. This is going to go into a preheated oven, 350 degrees, and I'm going to let it go for 45 minutes or so, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, just so that everything comes together with the lid on, and then I'll take the lid off for another 20 minutes just to let the cheese on top brown a little bit.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, Jules.
Hey, friends.
So,
A knife and a fork.
yeah, probably a knife and a fork. I give to you. Oh, there we go. Oh. Okay. Close, but no cigar. I give to you Mad Apple Casserole.
Okay.
Or Melanzane.
Okay. Eggplant?
Eggplant Parmesan. Essentially eggplant Parmesan, or a riff on an eggplant Parmesan. Although I didn't use Parmesan.
The only thing you really used was the eggplant.
I used the eggplant.
Okay.
And the reference is to the fact that nobody ate eggplant for hundreds of years after it was introduced into Europe because they thought it made you insane.
But then that's the same for a lot of new foods, right?
Including the tomatoes that are in this dish. The tomatoes in this dish
potatoes,
hung around in Europe for hundreds of years before anybody would eat them either.
squash,
Yeah.
all those things. Just
So-
not.
So even though this is an Italian dish, it really didn't happen until probably the mid-1800s.
That's pretty good, Glenn. Nicely done. It's not soft and gooey, slimy the way
slimy,
that
squishy,
you
yeah.
can really muss up eggplant sometimes. So that's really nice.
And I think part of that is using the panko. Panko gives a bit of body and strength and crunch to the whole thing. Now you could add a whole bunch of other flavors in here if you want, or you could just go with the basic like I did, although the panko is not part of the basic.
Yeah, you could layer other vegetables in there instead.
Well, like I said earlier, when Ma had an overabundance of zucchini,
Yep.
half of them would be zucchini and half of them would be, or all of them could be zucchini.
Yeah, I hadn't put this back together with your mom, but yeah, clearly tomatoes and cheese. Yeah. Yeah, that's a classic of Glen's mom. Almost anything with tomatoes and cheese, she was in.
Yep. So I think this is an easy supper time dish. The only sort of ridiculous part is how much time you spend frying off the eggplant.
The liquid from the eggplant.
Yeah. Other than that, it's dead simple. It's something worth your while. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.